You're listening to the Easy Feed Podcast, episode number 86, How to Get Kids to Try New Foods.
Hi there, I'm Karina Savage, and with over 20 years experience feeding children, including my own, I've learnt all the secrets that busy mums need to get their children eating better and actually enjoying healthy foods. So a huge welcome to the Easy Feed Podcast.
Well, hello and welcome back. Today is a great topic if you have a little one who you are struggling to get to try new foods. I often talk about the term the white diet. And look, it's a real struggle for so many families out there. Look, I've experienced it. I've had, my own challenges with kids loving the white diet. And look, my kids still love some white foods, of course, but I'm very happy that over the years I've been able to get more color and variety into their day, which is why I'm popping in to say things will absolutely change for you once you have a clear plan, but it's not necessarily an overnight thing. Okay. This is a long game, but absolutely things can change with the right plan of attack, which is what I love helping parents with. So, yeah, I wanted to pop in and chat about this whole white diet and how we break through the white diet today because it is a common source of stress for parents. It's a constant source of stress for many parents, let's be honest, because kids do love their safe, familiar foods. And, when your child lives on pasta and bread and crackers and milk all the time, you do start to worry. And when you do have a pastaholic or a child who loves rice or crackers or heaps of milk, it is natural for parents to worry about whether their child is getting the nutrients that they need, such as iron and zinc. So, today we're going to talk about why kids get stuck on white foods, why the usual tricks often don't work and what they are, what might be driving your child's resistance to try new foods, and the first three steps to start shifting things towards a greater variety of foods. And I will take this moment to let you know that I've got a brilliant freebie for you. It's sitting there waiting for you. All you need to do is head to nourishwithkarina.com/white, and it's there waiting for you, and you can get your fingertips on that. And it's exactly on this topic. It's exactly on how you can get your child to try new foods when everything else seems to have failed you. And it's not that you're failing, it's just that sometimes the things that we see online, they don't always work. Just putting veggies on the plate, that repeated exposure. So many of us have done it, but it doesn't necessarily work. So, okay, well, what do we do then? And that's what I've got for you waiting in that freebie. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm talking about the right child here. So, if this sounds like your child, then yes, this podcast episode is for you. So, your child loves pasta, bread, crackers, rice, milk, beige foods. And that can also extend to all the processed packaged foods like the messy monkeys, even though they're colored, they're not colored from being natural and coming out of the ground, that color. And the puffed potato sticks and all of those puffed things that are marketed as healthy, but 99% of them are not. And that's not your fault. That's just marketing um, deception, really. All of those foods still, I believe, fit into that sort of category of the white diet because they're not really nourishing our kids, right? It's nourishing the pockets of the food companies that make them sound healthy. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. And you can, I guess, gleam in my tone of voice that I'm not happy about it, but it's a whole nother issue. Anyway, back onto our children who love the white diet. They often refuse or avoid vegetables. Vegetables are a big one. That's a real concern for parents. Sometimes meat and sometimes the texture of meat can be a real challenge for some children. Maybe they've even eaten it when they were really young. So when they've started solids, they've maybe eaten a lamb chop, but then they go off meat. And often parents say to me, it's the texture. Kids struggle with the texture of meat. And I get that. And look, you don't have to eat meat. There's plenty of vegetarians out there that eat enough iron and nutrients to meet their needs. And often they're actually healthier because they have more fiber. So, and of course, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I prefer a plant-based way of eating rather than meat anyway. But meat is one that kids can be fussy with because of the texture. Sometimes it's the taste, but it does make parents worry because I guess we've been that our children that we all need to eat meat to meet our iron requirements. And so when our children are refusing it or spitting it out saying yuck, it makes us think, well, they're missing out. So vegetables is a common one, meat is a common one. They do refuse often mixed meals, so it's very common for children who are fussy or picky or love all the white foods to like meals deconstructed. So they don't like them all mixed together. And that can actually be the case until, almost the teenage years. And this has been backed up in research. So it's very common for children to like deconstructed meals. It's very common for children to refuse or say that's yuck, that's disgusting. Foods that are unfamiliar or have not been introduced regularly enough or perhaps early enough, they're not necessarily one of the familiar family foods. And some children will refuse foods that have texture or bits or might be mushy. So, certain textures and tastes can be really off putting to some children. And they sort of fall into almost that sensory feeding category. And look, this is not to say your child's neurodivergent because my own daughter has told me that she has sensory preferences with food and it's just normal. Like, I mean, I'm sure if we dig deep enough, we've all got sensory preferences with food, but sometimes they are very heightened and they can absolutely impact a child's preference for food. And that can very much steer them towards enjoying more of those white foods. So, how does this play out at mealtimes? Well, it's exhausting, right? You offer the good food, you offer the broccoli, you offer the piece of healthy meat, and they go, no, that's disgusting. They push it off the plate, they drop it on the floor, depending on their age. They might feed it to the dog. You try not to pressure them because you've heard not to pressure them, but you've been told that you've got to, give them the repeated exposure because kids need up to 15 or 20 exposures to accept the food. So you try your hardest, but deep down you're just fuming and you're frustrated and you might be feeling completely defeated because they're just not eating the damn food that you want them to eat. They're just steering towards their white pasta, their white rice, or they just want dessert. So, and then you're trying not to bribe with dessert because you've been told that you probably shouldn't bribe with dessert, but then you do bribe with dessert because you don't know anything else to do because nothing else is working and bribing with dessert only works half of the time anyway, but at least it's something you've got up your sleeve, right? So it's just a mess. And trying to get kids to try new foods can be one of the hardest things that you do as a parent. And it's just a real challenge. And so if you're saying, "Yep, Karina, this is me, this is my child, you are speaking to me." Well, I'm glad I am because I'm here to help, right? And as I said, head to nourishwithkarina.com/white. That's your freebie. You can get started with that today because I just know how hard it is. I've been there myself and I know a better way and I know a way that works. And that's why I want to share it with you. And I like sharing my framework, the Feeding Kids Ecosystem Framework, because it works. And that system is the backbone of my Feeding Kids Reset program, which is my flagship Fussy Eater program. And that's all available in the Nourish with Karina platform. You can find out more information on my website about that. Okay, so who here has made a smiley face on the plate hoping that their child will eat the vegetables because they've turned into a smiley face? Well, look, it works some of the time, but not necessarily if you've got a child with, say, sensory preferences, because it's the wrong fix for the wrong underlying cause. So we need to make sure that there is a good match for fixing why they may not try new food or why they may be steering towards the white diet. And again, I do go into all of that inside my Feeding Kids Reset. But at the end of the day, you need to feel confident that your child is getting everything that they need because it is very common to worry about iron or protein. Sometimes our kids are constipated because they're not eating enough fiber, they're not drinking enough fluid, and that can also mess with appetite regulation. So, I mean, I think we've probably all had, a day or two where we've needed to do a poo, some stage in our life. And when you need to do a poo and you're constipated, it just messes with your whole appetite, fullness. You feel yuck, you can feel more bloated. So, kids that are chronically constipated, that does impact their appetite, their hunger, their fullness. It messes with that whole rhythm. And so it's really important to address bowel issues as well. If you've got a child who's not eating as well as you want them to. And really, it's like, well, is it the chicken or the egg? Because if they ate better, they would poo better. but then they're not pooing well. So then that could influence how they're eating. It's like this vicious cycle. So we've got to start somewhere. And hopefully some of these tips today will help. But obviously, if you're needing more one on one help, then please reach out. I also do one on one consultations. And you can find out that information too, actually, on my website. Just click the consults tab. Before we move on to discussing why kids get stuck on white foods, I do also want to make a point around your partner, your husband, your wife, whoever is raising this child with you. If there is a partner, if not, then you're probably not arguing with anybody. But sometimes arguments happen between husband and wife or whoever, is at home. The majority of the time it will be husband and wife. And that parent sometimes applies a lot more pressure, and I think it also very much relates to their own personal experiences growing up. Maybe they were in a bit of a pressure cooker situation every dinner where they were made to finish their dinner and made to finish the plate, and you're not leaving the table until you've eaten every last pea. Whereas another parent might have had a very different upbringing with parents who had a very different feeding approach. And so sometimes parents will differ. With how worried they are about the child. One parent will be like, oh, it's just normal. Another parent will be like, oh my gosh, there's a division in everything. And then their approach might be different too, because one parent might be like, well, just make them eat it. Just sit there. You're going to sit there. You're not going to get any dessert. You're going to sit there for 2 hours until you finish it. And the other one's like, we're not supposed to pressure them. We're not supposed to talk about food. So it can be very challenging. And then the parents butt heads because they're very different in terms of their understanding and the approach that they want to take. And so that can bring a lot of stress at meal times. Then the child's just sitting there going, "Oh my gosh, like what's going on here?" So a lot of stress, a lot of frustration, a lot of worry can arise from a child who is refusing to try new foods, and parents who love their child and want the best for their child and want them to eat the healthy food, and they just won't put it to their mouth, or they might, and then they spit it out or they drop it on the floor, and then there's the yuck, the disgusting. I'm not eating that. So it's hard. And look, I just want you to know that if you are sick of cooking 3 different meals, if you're sick of arguing about food, if you're sick of feeling frustrated about what they're not eating or what they are eating, then please know that you're not alone and you're not failing. This is just hard work. And maybe you do need a different system. Maybe you do need a better system to support your family. But feeding kids can be really challenging. And I think it's really important to understand what's going on, what's driving this white food cycle, because once you understand what's really going on, things start to make far more sense and you can start to get traction and get motion and start moving in the right direction without the stressful meal times, without the bribing. I had a parent the other day that told me that they paid or they were offering. It didn't actually, the transaction didn't happen because the child didn't do it. The parent was offering $100 for the child to eat the carrot and just wouldn't do it. And I was like, "No, I'm not doing that." I've had $50 before, but the $100, that was stepping it up. Oh my goodness. But, it just goes to show the lengths that some parents will go to. We are so desperate for our children to try new foods. We will try anything. And it comes back to a place of love. We just want our kids to eat well and be healthy because we love them. The kids aren't doing it to be malice. They're not doing it to be argumentative. They usually get stuck on these foods because they are predictable, they are familiar, they are often lower in sensory challenge, and they're comforting to the child. And so, for many reasons, they resort back to their comfort zone. And we as human beings, I think, naturally gravitate back to our comfort zone. And with kids, these foods are their comfort zone, as their safe foods, you would, potentially call them. So, for a child who does feel a little cautious around food, or for a child who is a bit more anxious, these foods can feel safe. And that's why they gravitate back to the pasta, the rice, the yogurt, the milk, the cereals, the bland snack foods that sometimes are full of rubbish. Okay. But that's why they do it. They're not doing it to be argumentative or malicious, or they don't deliberately want to, give you a nervous breakdown, even though behind the scenes you feel like you're going to have one sometimes, because it's just hard work. But anyway, what we're actually needing to do is create a new system behind the scenes and probably a new approach and mindset often helps from a parental perspective, because if we just keep going around in that same cycle, that feeding cycle of despair, it can really drag us down. And then our vibe and our energy at the table, it's pretty much rock bottom. And parents pick up on that. I had a chat with a mum yesterday in a fussy consult, and she said to me, I'm so anxious about feeding. I'm so anxious about her choking, because this one was a toddler. And, she was very aware that her level of parental anxiety was directly influencing her daughter's ability to eat. And it was, in a way, well, not in a way, it was directly, therefore, impacting her variety of foods. And mum was aware of that. Mum was working really hard on that. And so it's important to understand where the work needs to be done, whether it's a parent thing, whether it's a child thing. As I said, the sensory challenges there, or whether it's an environment thing. And as I said, and those three components are the backbone of my kids feeding ecosystem, which is the backbone of my bus eating program. So it's really important to unpack it and understand what's going on. Is it pressure at the table? Is it too much grazing through the day? Is it stressed around meal times? Is it cooking 3 different meals or offering them plan B when plan A gets refused? It creates a cycle, and it's easy to go around and around and around in this cycle unless you step back and sort of take that 30,000-foot view and say, "Okay, what's going on here? What do we need to do differently?" Because if you don't do anything different, nothing is going to change. And nothing changes if nothing changes. And what do they say? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again, even if it's not working for you. So I think, look, we've all been guilty of that. Well, I know I have, of just, trying your best, but just doing the same old thing because that's what you know and that's what you hope will help, but it doesn't necessarily help, right? So we need to understand how we can change things and how we can move our child to start to try new foods. But it's not always what you see on social media and online. And in fact, it can make it 10 times worse. Again, this chat I was having with mum yesterday, who was in a fussy eater consult online with me, she said that, she'll see things online and it just makes her feel 100 times worse because her child is not at that level. She sees, these healthy platters, and she said, "And I'll watch one," and then the algorithm pushes more at her, so it makes it even worse, and it just makes her feel more and more incompetent and makes her feel worse and worse about how her child is eating, and it's just not fair. And so social media often will work against us. I mean, look, we know that in most respects, right? It works against us. So it's just important to be mindful of what's going on right now and what's actually making things worse for you without you even realizing. Subconsciously, social media can actually be making it harder rather than helping, because most parents I speak to are trying incredibly hard. They're not doing nothing, they're doing everything. So they're buying the healthy foods, they're finding the healthy recipes online, they're trying to offer variety, they're trying to do the repeated exposure, they're trying to stay calm. Sometimes they're trying reward charts. They're trying to hide vegetables. They're trying to make smoothies. They're trying to say, just take one bite. They're trying to use dessert as a bit of a leverage sometimes. They're trying to cook multiple meals each night just to try and get their child to eat something. They might be Googling late at night. They're worrying, when they're sitting on the toilet or they're lying in bed, they're worrying about their child. And it's constant, right? So it's not like parents aren't trying. Of course they're trying. It's not a lack of effort. The problem is a lack of system, and an effective system that's actually going to set your child up to eventually try these new foods. But we've got to plant seeds, and the seeds need to be planted plentifully. And you need a system to do that. And it doesn't involve pressure, yelling, forcing. Just try it. One bite. If you eat this, you can have dessert. It doesn't involve any of that, because when food starts to become emotionally loaded, kids become less invested. As soon as you start applying pressure and asking them to take one bite, look, it's human nature, right? If someone really forcefully asks you to do something, are you going to be more inclined to do it or less inclined to do it? I can tell you I'd be less inclined to do it. And kids are no different, and food is no different. So if we are putting the pressure on, then they are going to be running in the different direction or the other direction. It's a bit like a dog that gets off the lead, right? If you start chasing after it, it's not going to come to you. It's going to run away from you. So same thing here. So as soon as we're putting more pressure on the kids, their walls are going up. They're like, I'm out, I'm out, I'm out. Especially if they also have other underlying challenges, so sensory challenges. And if they're being loaded up with all of these sort of layers that are increasing anxiety mealtimes, they're going to be less and less and less likely to engage, especially in trying a new food. The number of parents that say things to me like this: I give him the foods I don't want to give him, but I'm giving them to him because I know that he will eat them. Another one will be, I'm so sick of cooking different meals for the family. Another one's, my partner and I don't agree on what to do. And another one is, I feel so guilty. It's my fault. I've made this worse. And that is such a common one. So many parents feel so guilty and it's so unfair. You are just doing the best you can. Okay, so let's now move into 3 shifts that will help move the wheels in the right direction. Okay, so we need to start somewhere. And I know that it's really important to try and simplify things because sometimes it can feel real hard, too hard. So the first thing that I want you to think about is to stop making the whole goal to eat the new food. Because when the whole goal is to eat the new food, it becomes too much of a big deal. The new food will be eaten when the time's right, and it will be at a time when you least expect it. It's just trying to find a husband or wife, actually, isn't it? When you hear those stories about people hunting and hunting and hunting for a partner for a lot for the rest of their life, and they struggle for years and years and years, and when they're least expecting it, boom, up they pop, and then they find their partner for life. So same thing here with the new foods. Less is more. Stop making the whole goal for dinner to be to eat that new food. What we need to do is focus on a different form of success. Success for some children might be coming to the table. It might be picking up a food, sniffing it, licking it, crunching it, spitting it out. Yes, can be progress for some children. We don't necessarily view it as progress. We view it as they have refused our food, that we've put a lot of time and effort into it. We take it personally. We get mad. We get angry. We get frustrated. But for them, it's actually possibly success and moving towards liking that food. So it's how you view it, it's how you frame it. And we need to start considering broadening what success looks like and stop focusing on the fact that they've got to take that bite of broccoli today, because the more pressure you put on yourself or on them, the worse it's going to be. So we really need to stop making the whole goal to eat the food. And I think we really need to reframe what success looks like for your child, because absolutely for some children, success will be picking up and licking an apple, for example. I saw a child today, 3 years old, predominantly getting their nutrition from formula, not able to, at this point, eat much in the way of food. And so for that child, 100% success is going to be picking up and licking that apple. Now you might be listening and saying, yeah, Karina, but my child's not that severe. And I'll say, sure, but success will be different for your child, but you also need to consider perhaps lowering your expectations or reframing what success might be for your child. I know that you want them to eat, all of the healthy stuff, but it might be that you need to reframe what success looks like and focusing on the success that they do experience and not making it, and not only focusing on success as being eating the food. Because you have to remember, they have plenty of opportunities to eat food each day. Dinner is only 1/5 or 1/6 of their day. So we can't place all the emphasis on eating healthy foods at dinner. It might be a time when they're super tired. They might actually front end the day, not back end the day. So we need to be really mindful of that. Okay, number 2 is don't just serve up all new foods, because that's not fair on them. We need to have some familiarity around their table. We need to have that safe food on the plate as well. You can't just serve up, the whole brand new meal that you might be eating and go, that's dinner tonight. You have to eat it or you're going hungry. That's it. And then they don't eat it and then you lose the plot inside. And that's not fair on you or them. Okay. So we need to make sure that you do keep a safe food and build around that, but don't give them a whole new meal that is all new foods. Some people think that they only have 2 choices: serve only what the child likes, or serve, the hardball, this is the new healthy meal that we're all eating. It needs to be a compromise between the two. So, for example, if the family is having roast potatoes, salmon, and broccoli, and your child loves roast potatoes but won't eat the salmon or the broccoli, then you serve them the roast potatoes as their safe food. And then, yes, the rest of the family's eating the salmon, the broccoli. Maybe you put a little bit of salmon and broccoli on their plate, Maybe you don't. You build around that. And again, inside my Feeding Kids Reset, we talk about strategies for subbing in and subbing out the salmon or the broccoli for various things. And I give you plenty of tips on what you could sub it in and out for. But it's important to have some of that safe food on their plate to start with. It's not the plan B, it's part of the plan A. And there should only be one meal anyway. There should only be plan A. Okay, the third tip I've got for you is to protect their appetite. And we need to protect their appetite multiple ways. So, number one, we need to make sure that there is a system and structure around meals and snacks. So they're not all melding in together and being like one constant grazing buffet throughout the day. We need to make sure that there's structure around that to protect their appetite. We need to look at their milk intake because that can impact appetite. We need to look at nutrient deficiency because that can impact appetite. So, appetite is a huge piece of the puzzle. If they're drinking milk all day long, they're not going to be hungry to eat. Structure is real key here, and children do much better with structure and clear boundaries. So, we need to protect their appetite. So, let's just recap those three things. Number one is don't focus solely on them eating that new food. Let's focus on planting seeds. Let's celebrate the small wins and perhaps reframe what success looks like at dinner time for your child. Number two, make sure that you do keep a safe food, familiar food in there as part of plan A, the only meal option. And then you build around that with the foods that you're also eating. And number three, make sure that you're protecting their appetite and setting up a structure that supports their appetite. And if that means that you do have to explore, gut issues, constipation, or nutrient deficiencies, then so be it, because that's also going to support their appetite and therefore support their overall nutrient intake. So the goal here is not perfection. The goal here is to start somewhere. And if you've been with me a while, you'll always hear me talk about focusing on one small win and getting that win under your belt and gaining momentum helps you really achieve where you want to get to with your child's eating. But it is a journey. Granted, 100% it's a journey. And as I said, I've got plenty of information for you depending on where you're at. But if you want everything and you want to start now, then just head to nourishwithkarina.com and you will find all the information there. You can join my platform. You can start my Feeding Kids Reset. And you've got all of that information there ready to go. But if you want to check out my freebie first, then that's a brilliant place to start. So head to nourishwithkarina.com/white. Download my freebie, which will help you stretch your child's intake and get them trying new foods. There is every chance that your child can move beyond white foods and start trying new foods. So if they're stuck on pasta, if they're stuck on rice, it doesn't mean that they're going to eat this way forever. And you don't have to second guess and doubt yourself or your approach. As I said, all the support is there waiting for you. Start with a freebie if that's the way you want to go, absolutely fine. Or as I said, head to my website for a deeper dive. So that website again was nourishwithkarina.com/white to grab your freebie today on how to get your child trying new foods. You are never alone on this. Please send me a message on Instagram or email me hello@nourishwithkarina.com. I hope you've loved this episode and I can't wait to chat with you again soon. Bye for now.